We're back with more Madden 22 gameplay news. EA Sports just released their Gridiron Notes deep dive blog where they cover everything we need to know about gameplay in Madden 22. They talk about core improvements to movement, coverage, tackling, passing. They also go in depth about some other things like plays and playbooks. They also go even deeper into the dynamic game day, momentum, and home field advantage stuff. Now, since we've already talked a lot about dynamic game day and home field advantage, we'll save that for later in the video. There is some new info to go over there, but first, I want to focus more on the core gameplay improvements because that's the stuff we haven't heard anything about yet. And if you're new to the channel and you want to stay up to date on all the latest Madden 22 news because there's still a ton more stuff coming out each week, make sure to subscribe, turn the bell icon on so you don't miss any of these uploads when they go live, especially when your boy gets some exclusive gameplay footage. That should be happening soon enough, so you won't want to miss that when that goes live as well. Okay, so let's get into the core gameplay improvements. The first thing they touch on is player movement. It says here, to continue our journey with next-gen stats driving our player movement to more authentic levels, we've continued relying on this data to add even more movement nuance and athleticism to this year's game. One of the biggest areas of emphasis in Madden 21 was route data, and we've added a bunch of new play-specific routes in Madden 22. In addition to more routes, receivers will be using signature cuts and releases off the line to gain space against the press and deliver more control when turning upfield after a catch or near the sideline for both user-controlled and AI-controlled receivers. For more explosive player movement, you'll see ball carriers and defenders alike showing maximum effort in their posture when sprinting and using new animations that explode faster through starts and cuts, which was a critical piece of feedback we received from the Madden community last season. You'll feel smooth and explosive control for QBs both inside and outside of the pocket and everything in between as we've added more animation content and better transitions. Now let me interject here really quickly because as most of you know, I have been playing the beta for the last 2 weeks, so I've gotten pretty hands-on with the game, and it is true the player movement has definitely made some strides this year. It's not as sluggish as it was in Madden 21 Next Gen. They definitely move a little bit better. They accelerate better. The QBs feel fast when you're scrambling with them, even if they don't have escape artists, which is better. They definitely did add new signature routes, and the explosiveness and signature releases and stuff like that is definitely true. You definitely see some of those higher end route running guys that you know in the NFL. They look more like themselves when they're running their routes or releasing off the line, and you definitely notice the elite guys explode faster through cuts, which is not something we've seen in Madden in a long time. So it's nice to see that when they're planting their foot and trying to run their route, they're able to create more separation than they were doing last year. Up next, let's talk about tackling. Tackling got a significant upgrade across the board. These upgrades include a complete refresh of the most used tackles from years past, with a focus on new interactions that are more appropriate to specific situations and aim to pay off the size and strength of the players in the tackle to better respect physics and user control. Some of the new tackle content and situations you'll see in Madden 22 are touch player down tackles, where defenders will show the awareness of a ball carrier giving himself up or falling down without being ruled down by touching the player on the ground or shoving back to the ground as he gets up to get the play blown dead. Sideline tackles will show defenders using the sideline to their advantage by triggering specific tackling content for interactions near the boundaries. Early hurdle tackles will intelligently fill animation gaps in tackling right when the ball carrier starts a hurdle and ensure that the tackle interaction that takes place looks and feels appropriate for this specific situation. Concurrent gang tackles deliver more organic animations that can dynamically include anywhere from 2 to 4 players all joining into these tackles at different times. New and improved broken tackles will have a bigger impact on the game as we now have quick broken tackles that leave the ball carrier in control during the interaction, and a more robust system for broken dive tackles that will occur more frequently based on player matchups. New tackling momentum logic will better detect the size, speed, and traits of the player involved in the matchup so that base tackle physics of both the entry and outcome will match more appropriately. You'll see bigger backs falling forward more in tackles, while smaller, more agile backs will get thrown backwards. AI-controlled players will also be aware of these matchups, so you'll see smaller AI defenders taking the legs out from underneath bigger ball carriers, and big bruising ball carriers seeking out contact by looking for more trucks and stiff arms, and all brought to life with the new momentum-specific tackling animations. So let me interject here once again. Yes, they have improved the tackling. There's definitely more tackle animation, which is nice, but you even see when they talk about it here in the blog, they said that they kind of redid and refreshed and made better their most used tackle animations, which is exactly what it sounds like. You're still going to see a lot of those same tackles playing out over and over, and I know a lot of people don't like that. They want to see every tackle be different, and that's just not something that's in Madden currently. You're still going to see some of the more common tackles happening over and over, but they have at least added some new content improvement there in terms of different player awarenesses and how the tackles are being made. There's definitely new tackle animations. We've seen a couple of them in the trailers, like players getting thrown backwards and stuff like that. Again, much like the player movement, an area that they definitely got better in, but it's still, you know, I mean, there's a long way to go, and you're still going to have those animation moments, if you will, where, you know, tackles are going to look bad. It's going to look rough. There's going to be those warping and suction things going on. Those still exist. It is still the Madden you know. Did it get better? Yes. Is it where it needs to be? No. Now let's talk about catching. For catching controls, Madden NFL players desired more control and more organic outcomes in the passing game. To fulfill that desire, we've made a lot of changes to significantly decrease the frequency of multiplayer catches. There will be no more run after catch multiplayer catches, no more contextually questionable short yardage multiplayer catches, and less slowdowns by receivers with a step or two of separation. What you will see are more single player catching scenarios where both players are independently playing the ball or seamlessly playing the receiver with catch tackles, catch knockouts, and mid-air collisions. Specific to mid-airs, we added some functionality so that the intended outcome of the interaction will be respected on any tackle that takes place during the catch, so you don't have to rely on a specific animation to play to get the correct play outcome. We've also improved sideline catching by adding logic for more accurate foot detection and added brand new sideline catch animations for more variety in both core Madden NFL and the yard. So now when catching near the boundaries, those toe drag catches will be more accurate and efficient. Lastly, we've done some tuning to improve the catch height thresholds so that big receivers will have a larger catch radius and defenders attempting to swat the ball will have a larger range to reach the ball to knock it away. Now this is an area that I think made probably the best improvement from the little that I've been able to test with the beta. There definitely are less two-man interactions. Now that doesn't mean that there are no two-man interactions. They're definitely still there and they still happen often enough, but they're happening a lot less than in years past. And that was one of the areas I know myself hated the most about the game, and I know a lot of people hated them as well, when both the DB and the receiver would kind of just morph into this interaction and you felt like you had zero control over it. Now you do see a little bit more one-on-one. You see them kind of playing the ball independently instead of sucking together in an animation. And also when they talk about the catch height, I did notice that it seemed like the bigger receivers, like the Mike Evans and stuff like that, they do have a little bit more of an advantage now than they've had in a long time. They can go up over the smaller DBs more often, again, because it's an independent animation, and they can kind of box them out and get to the ball at a higher point. And I know just from my own comment section, I've seen that complaint more than most things about how the smallest DBs can just dominate big wide receivers. The DB always wins when you throw it up. Well, I'm here to tell you that from what I've played, that's going to happen a lot less this year. Now, whether or not they tweak that and change it during the year, you know, that's out of my hands. All I can tell you is what I've been playing, and that's how it's played out for me. Next up is the blocking. Just like with tackling, we are using our new momentum logic in blocking, and you'll first notice this in the pocket. To respect the physics of pass rushers as they fire off into the line, you'll see new animation content when blockers engage defenders, when they are battling towards the QB, and when they ultimately attempt to shed the block to get past the blocker. This results in a more organic and dynamic formation of the pocket that you'll have to be aware of as the QB. The pass rush will be flying in all forms and all angles, and gamers will need good pocket presence to step up into the pocket from time to time. Momentum will have an impact on the run blocking as well, as we've added new blocking animations that better respect the speed and movement detection of the defender at the time of engagement, so that moments where you feel the suction or loss of control as a defender are reduced, and even added more content where defenders are getting penetration into the backfield as part of the engagement to better balance the run game. Lastly, on offense, blockers will give more clear running lanes for the ball carrier to cut through, as we've added new blocking content for blocks moving more laterally and backwards, and are now able to start blocking interactions from a wider variety of angles, which reduces the number of head-up interactions on each play. We've done work with screenplays so that the lineman pulling will appropriately chip pass rushers before releasing, and made some improvements to their speed, facing angle, and targeting logic while in the open field. We've also added new impact block animations and tuning so that mismatches will be better reflected, especially when using smaller defenders inside the box to defend run plays. So to interject here again, I will say that blocking is one of the areas that I still feel like needs the most work in the game. While some of this is true from my experience, yes, the pocket does noticeably form a little bit better. It forms a little bit deeper, but the opposite part of this is that the block sheds seem to be so crazy this year, especially the splitting of double team blocks, which most of us know have always been a problem. They seem even like more of a problem to me this year. So while the pocket does form a little bit better on average, the block shedding is so crazy that it doesn't really matter, because you can never really step up into the pocket because there's always a nose tackle almost immediately splitting a double team. So you have nowhere to step up into the pocket on most plays. So I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there. The momentum with blockers versus smaller defenders is definitely an area that is a nice improvement. So for example, when you're playing against people that like to sub in safeties at linebacker, this is a popular tactic online that people use in nickel formations. When you do that now, you'll notice that when your offensive lines get going upfield, you'll see those guys get pancaked more, or if not pancaked, you see them get pushed backwards. They drive them backwards a lot easier, which they should, because most safeties in the league are not going to be able to contend with a big lineman with a head of steam the same way a linebacker could. So that is definitely an area of improvement, but there's still a lot of issues with guys just flat out missing blocks. The double team blocking is still bad. The targeting upfield is still not very good as well. So I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done with blocking, even though there's been some minimal improvements from my experience. Here are some other core improvements that they just listed out. They increased the ranges for pass lead and pass trajectory, decreased the effectiveness of the over-top coverage adjustment when guarding routes with cuts, increased the get-off speed of blitzing defenders so they are faster to their gaps, new impact blocks that respect player momentum with an emphasis on bigger offensive linemen dominating smaller defensive backs inside the tackle box. We just went over that one. Added multiplayer scramble sack interactions, reduced match distance on blocks from the rear and back shoulder, retuned the high throw mechanic to make it more effective, major tuning to multiplayer catching to reduce the frequency but also reduce warping when they are used, improved pursuit logic to decrease the frequency of over and under pursuit tackles, improved defender reaction time when in position to play the ball versus the pass. After the whistle, teammates will now help the ball carrier up off the ground when in position to do so. Now, some of these are true. The pass trajectory is better. However, the pass leading, I feel like, got worse. The get up speed of the blitzers definitely is a little bit more improved. They were very slow last year. The impact blocks, as we talked about, definitely work better on the smaller defensive backs. The pursuit logic, on the other hand, I feel like there's still plenty of the same pursuit issues in Madden. Much like with blocking, pursuit is still one of those things that it's a long ways away. There's still a lot of bad pursuit in the game from my experience. Next, let's touch on the playbooks. It says here, all 32 NFL team playbooks have been updated to reflect their real-world plays up through the end of last season, with a heavy emphasis on ensuring teams with new head coaches and offensive coordinators match the new personnel. For both offense and defense, we focused on making sure play call percentages and tendencies are as accurate as possible to ensure they closely match the play calling of the real-world counterparts when controlled by the AI. We added new formations and nearly 300 new plays, many of which are new concepts added to the game. This I've definitely noticed when they did an update in the beta. There's a ton of new plays and formations added. 300 is a pretty good number, especially since they didn't update it at all really last year during the year. I would like to see them still do more with live updates, but 300 is a decent start. That's a decent amount of new plays to dive into when the game releases. Here are the new formations that will be in the game at launch. The gun bunch Y flex, tight end aligned in a tight split opposite the bunch receivers, gun empty quads, gun normal Y off, gun normal Y off close, gun normal Y off weak, gun open flex weak, gun tight Y off, gun tight Y off weak, gun weak, halfback weak, gun wing halfback weak, pistol open flex close, single back deuce Y flex makes a return to the game, single back bunch X nasty, strong jumbo goal line look with a fullback aligned strong in the backfield, and nickel 155 double A gap. Now, I've messed with some of this in the beta. The gun bunch Y flex is definitely a pretty crazy formation. It's in the Chiefs playbook. It's in a number of other playbooks as well, but this one has some pretty cool plays in it. Now we're going to talk about pass coverage, an area that always needs work in this game. For Madden 22, our focus is to improve the way pass coverage reacts and carries out assignments versus the most effective and most frequently called pass plays. Our decision making was driven by the data that showed us which pass plays are called the most by players and which have the highest yards per completion rate. We tested each of our defensive coverage concepts against those plays to identify issues with how we defended them in Madden. The top 5 pass plays we identified were gun Trey Y flex dagger, which, I mean, that was my favorite play last year. I even did an entire video on it. Gun empty base flex verticals, gun Trey Y flex PA crossers, single back wing pair tight end attack, and gun bunch mesh spot. So basically what they said was they did some tuning to try to better take away these plays. In my opinion, it still needs a lot of work, but they did some tuning with the back pedal, turn, and run transition. They did some work with the leverages. They did work with vertical crossing routes to, try to get players to match these routes and carry them better. They did some work with rallying to the flats where, the curl flat defender and the cloud flat defender a lot of times would be in no man's land. So now they're supposed to, defend those deeper crossers better, but they're also supposed to rally down to the flats passer to take away the underneath route, which is what people like to do. And they did some animation improvements as well. Now, I will say that gun Trey Y flex dagger, for example, I went and tested this out a lot, and to me the play still works as good as ever. The deep zones still do a bad job at carrying the deep crossing routes to the sidelines, and some of the underneath stuff just doesn't get in the right place. However, there's still zone drop adjustments in the game, so that does kind of help mask this. So now we're going to touch on some of the dynamic game day, momentum, home field advantage stuff. We've already heard a lot about this already, so I'm not going to cover everything that they wrote because we've already gone over that info, but they did put a few new things in here, so I do want to make sure to cover that. So as it pertains to momentum, this is an important thing that they wrote here. It said the flow of the meter is driven purely by the action on the field, where big plays like touchdowns, turnovers, and sacks will grab more momentum than smaller plays. Because we have different ways to play, the meter used in tournaments, online ranked head-to-head, and some Ultimate Team modes will be tuned differently than the base way to play, so that skillful user play will be far more important in swinging momentum than play outcomes. So you swing your momentum back and forth, then you unlock what's called M factors. When those are unlocked, they will light up in the meter, and you'll also see them in the coach cam with full descriptions telling you exactly what they do and when they are active. There's no hidden stat boost, no under the hood game flow modifications, only the M factors unlocked by in-game performance. The M factors that are available in each game will always vary based on where the game is played or what the elements are, so that each game will feel like a different experience. We're also introducing a modernized blast from EA's Football Pass known as Home Field Advantage. Each NFL team is equipped with one extra unique M factor that will be only available when that team is defending its home turf. For teams playing at home, their Home Field Advantage allows them one extra M factor to unlock via momentum, but always will be the first to be disabled if the road team captures the momentum first. These unique perks have been specifically designed to celebrate the fandom of each team's unique personalities, such as teams visiting the Mile High city of Denver having lower stamina reserves, or hard to see play art when playing in front of the historically loud crowd in Seattle. And just like with the different tuning sets for different modes, any game played in a neutral site environment will not equip home field advantage, since there is no home team. So when you're playing the Super Bowl in franchise or in an MCS stadium on the competitive ladder, you won't have to contend with home field advantage. So basically, offline play in franchise, momentum is more play outcome based, so getting first downs, getting big gains, scoring touchdowns, whereas when you're playing online head-to-head, the momentum's going to give you more of a boost for user plays like user interceptions, user hit sticks. It's still going to give you momentums for scoring touchdowns and big plays, but it's going to be a little more focused on the actual user play. Next, they go on to talk about the crowds and the atmosphere. It says one of these unique characteristics you'll notice first is the crowd. We have brand new crowd animations and created super fan characters for each team to give each team their 12th man. Through working directly with NFL teams, we've remastered our real-world crowd audio recordings and added more authentic sound elements for each stadium to hear what each stadium sounds like on game day. Not only is there more variety in the sound, but we've also pumped up the volume and intensity of the crowd so you'll feel the key moments of the game. For example, a loud crowd might make it tougher for your QB to hear a call or make an audible at the line. The sidelines will also react to the action on the field. You'll see players and coaches on the sideline react to the momentum of the game, pump up the crowd, and sometimes interact with players on the field. And even the players on the field will have momentum-based reactions for more organic displays of emotion after the whistle blows. In addition to M factors brought on by momentum, game day atmosphere introduces some similar environmental traits. Game day conditions are persistent modifications to gameplay that will impact both teams equally for the entire game. These conditions aren't driven at all by momentum, but instead by the environment. The weather, the quality of the turf, rivalry games, and even the fan base are used to determine game day conditions, which can be either beneficial or detrimental to both teams. Some examples of these are increased ball flight in the high altitude like Denver, or decreased change of direction ratings for all players on the field when playing on slippery surfaces. Lastly, the broadcast package package will bring all this to life with new pre-game presentation to set the stage. Expect more NFL next-gen stats packages and overlays, new stat banners and wipes, various new camera angles, new Super Bowl presentation, and more. Lastly here, they talk about next-gen stats and how they're driving the new star-driven AI. It says for individual AI players, next-gen stats are now used to drive deeper player tendencies. Based on the data we have for each player, certain thresholds are in place that will automatically assign certain player traits that drive specific behaviors such as QB decision making while under pressure, QB passing aggressiveness in tight window throws, QB pass success on the run, and even ball carrier tendencies around breaking and or evading tackles. To lay down a solid foundation for these stat-driven behaviors, we also did a lot of work to improve our core fundamental AI. You'll see improvements in ball carrier open field pathfinding, QB read progressions, QB scramble logic, and more awareness of star teammates and superstar X Factor abilities so that AI players will utilize their abilities and mismatches just as you do. Both in Play Now and Franchise, these player tendencies will evolve all season long as stats change and game plans evolve, either in the real world via frequent next-gen stat imports or within your franchise sim, so that each game will feel as exciting as each week in the NFL season. For Team AI, our goal is for every game to present a unique puzzle to solve. Each team will have its own personality, play calling style, and team tendencies, all driven by next-gen stats. All this data about your opponent will be surfaced to you in different ways depending on the mode you are playing, and you'll be able to make strategic game plan decisions about how you want to counter their strengths or lean more heavily into your own. You'll be able to make game plan decisions either in the pre-game of Play Now games, during your weekly practice schedule in Franchise, and for the first time at halftime of every game. So I think this is really more important for the franchise crowd, for each game to feel different. You don't want to feel like you're playing the same team every week, which is how franchise has been for a long time. So with the real world next gen stat data, the teams and tendencies should be more like they are in real life, and they're going to update those throughout the year so that however teams are playing later in the year, that can be reflected in the game. So that's all for today. A lot of info to cover. Let me know what you like, dislike, drop a comment below. Check out some of these other videos right here, and I will see you guys next time.